Well, good morning. You know, I grew up figuring that free speech was something that we had handled, at least in the West. But once again, we're reminded that this requires vigilance every day. We've seen this brutally so in Europe and strangely so in the United States recently, where North Korea, or someone trying to look a lot like them, launched what is probably the greatest cyber attack in American history, all because of a silly movie. Today, I'd like to look beyond that bathroom humor at how this film is becoming something of an underground phenomenon in China, Myanmar, and North Korea, and how it might shine a light on the efforts of North Korean refugees and millennials who use free speech as an act of defiance and self-determination. And for the first time, I'd like to show you footage that we shot last week of North Korean defectors watching the film The Interview and telling us in their own words why this satire might be such a threat to their regime. You know, as early as June, North Korea went on record saying that a movie that mocked its leader wasn't just a bad idea, it was an act of war. But you have to hand it to the North Korean propaganda machine. No one writes Cold War movie copy like they do. In December, hackers threatened movie theaters. The film was canceled. A second North Korea project was shut down. And suddenly America, where our brand is supposed to be about free speech, seemed like it was caving. With a nudge from President Obama, the film made history with a last-minute Christmas opening. And that night, Christmas night, we had an idea. What if we could direct all this attention on the film back on the dictatorship itself? What if we could hack them back? In a few minutes, we're going to go live to Seoul to meet the Human Rights Foundation, which uses old and new technology to break the Kim regime's information monopoly. And you'll meet North Korean defectors who they're supporting in this Hack Them Back initiative. But let's step back and talk a little bit about the incredible power of open culture on the most closed place on earth. In North Korea, people have no internet. Radios and TVs are hardwired to state channels. Modifying them is a crime. But there's a black market for media players and a growing audience of North Koreans who are curious about the outside world. Yeonmi Park is a North Korean refugee with an amazing story about seeing a smuggled copy of James Cameron's Titanic for the first time. She actually worried that the cast might be executed because in North Korea, they can make films about dying for the regime, but never about dying for love.
I was able to connect with the film. It gave me a taste of freedom. It wasn't propaganda, but a story, people dying for love, a man willing to die for a woman. It changed my thinking. It changed the way I saw the regime and their endless propaganda. Titanic made me realize that I was controlled by the regime. I was not aware, like a fish is not aware of water. North Koreans are abducted at birth, so they don't know the concepts of freedom or human rights. They don't know that they are slaves.
It makes you realize that culture that we take for granted, even trivial culture, is a power representation of our values. And here's the truly powerful thing. Yeonmi represents a generation of North Korean millennials who grew up with a thriving black market, one that evolved because the state was incapable of meeting their needs after the Soviet Union pulled support during a time of great famine. For this new generation, sharing video is a form of social capital. It's got kinship with millennials around the world, only with much greater stakes. As Yeonmi says, North Koreans risk their lives to access this kind of information because it's a form of rebellion against the state. But how do you support this effort where communication is prohibited? Enter the work of defectors like Park Sang-hak and his supporters at the Human Rights Foundation. Here, they're launching high-altitude balloons loaded with small radios, DVDs, and flash drives so they can send movies, Wikipedia, and educational material to the aid of those looking for information. The balloons are launched clandestinely from the demilitarized zone. Such a launch will take place later this week as part of Hack Them Back. And for the first time, those packages will include North Korean versions of The Interview. Now, cracking North Korea represents one of the toughest communications challenges on earth. How do you further what's possible? You know, you want to bring the best minds in the room, pair developers with North Korean defectors, feeding off of one another, building prototypes with refugees. In other words, you need a hackathon. And that's exactly what happened this summer.
And now for the last look. Hack North Korea, organized by the Human Rights Foundation, brought 100 engineers, coders, activists, investors, and designers together in San Francisco to answer one burning question. How can we get information into and possibly out of North Korea? The attendees divided into 8 groups judged by a panel that included North Korean defectors, refugees, and even a computer scientist who once trained the regime's cyber warfare unit. The winner? Tiny portable satellite receivers, so small and flat they could be hidden on the exteriors of North Korean homes.
For the record, by the way, when the Kim regime heard about our hackathon, they weren't too happy about that either. It was perhaps the worst review of a hack event known. They called the effort a futile attempt to spy on and brainwash people. Instead of being humiliated by illusions of grandeur, the United States should focus on its own jeopardized and pathetic state, they said. They got one thing right about startup culture. A lot of great entrepreneurs have illusions of grandeur. And as any VC at DLD will tell you, you only need a few of them to hit and start a revolution. And it turns out this place, where we are today, plays an historic role in the defining fight for free speech. Because 60 years ago, in the depth of the Cold War, Munich stepped forward as home of Radio Free Europe. And it turns out that it was right on this street, at the Bayerischer that a previous generation of disruptive media leaders dedicated a most powerful radio transmitter for the effort. It was a Marshall Plan for the mind that sought to weaken communist regimes by sending banned and dissident literature behind the Iron Curtain. That effort has other resemblances to the present-day effort in North Korea.
Coordinated with broadcasts over Radio Free Europe, balloons launched by Free Europe Press carry millions of miniature newspapers into the satellite countries. The ingenious devices for spilling the newspapers over their targets. The communists have used jet fighters and anti-aircraft guns to shoot down the balloons, but the newspapers reach the ground. Even the communists can't lick gravity.
This upset them so much they used anti-aircraft guns to try to shoot them down, and when that effort didn't work, none other than the terrorist Carlos the Jackal led an effort to bomb the Munich transmitter in 1981. Which brings us to the present day. Sony was wavering last December. We were under threat, and then an intervention.
A developing story surrounding the Sony hacking scandal. The president points the finger at North Korea for the attack, but also called out Sony for pulling its film.
We cannot have a society in which some dictator someplace can start imposing censorship here in the United States.
You know, at this point, it's probably worth taking a look at a clip of this incendiary speech, this movie, at the center of the whole controversy, the interview.
You are entering into the most dangerous country on earth. Kim Jong-un's people believe anything he tells them, including that he can speak to dolphins or he doesn't urinate and defecate.
Oh. You telling me my man doesn't pee or poo?
Everybody pees and poos. Where would he go otherwise? He'd explode.
But he does talk to dolphins.
Nice tank! Is that real?
It was a gift to my grandfather from Stalin.
In my country, it's pronounced Stallone.
You know, when you look at a film like that, you think, oh my God, this is the Three Stooges going to North Korea. And it gets criticism. Is this too much satire to threaten a living dictator? Wasn't this unprecedented? Actually not. The Three Stooges themselves set the precedent.
Come in. Come in. Come in. Yeah.
I vanquished them. I am the winner. The world belongs to me. Give it to me.
No, it's mine.
Give me that world herring or I'll marinate you. Let me have it! My world. You nitwit, you shattered my world. You shattered my world. I've taken enough from you. This is the last.
The Stooges' 1944 film, of course, was an homage to Charlie Chaplin's The Great Dictator. And Chaplin faced a lot of the concerns that we face in the present era in the Charlie Hebdo case and in the interview. He was warned that the film might expose Jews in Europe to even harsher treatment, that no country would distribute the film. A year into production, Chaplin himself was so worried about the situation in Europe deteriorating, he felt there was completely nothing funny about Hitler and thought he shouldn't go on. And then, an intervention. FDR hears that studios were trying to discourage him from making the film, and he dispatched top aide Harry Hopkins to tell him to make the picture. FDR promises support for distribution. Of course, the interview is no great dictator. And like me, you're probably wondering, what does a North Korean make of crazy American humor? Does this help the cause of freedom, or would it just piss everyone off? So I decided to find out. Last week, we gathered a group of North Korean dissidents and showed them the interview, newly translated into North Korean, to get their perspective. Here's a clip of Andre Jo, who's a former party driver who later escaped after becoming a contractor in Russia, reacting to the film.
Oh, excuse me.
Did you just shark?
No, I did. It was that camera guy.
그 사실은 잘 모르겠지만 그 사실이라면 난 또 이제 그 사실이라고 이제 믿을 수밖에 없어요. 그러면 저도 놀랐어요. 난 미국에서 처음에 이제 김정은 암살과 그 관련한 이제 인터뷰 용어가 나왔다는.
Do you think that your people should be rewarded for their resilience and strength?
Of course, Dave.
Then why don't you feed them?
할 때 가장 놀랐어요. 그러니까 역시 북한 사람들은 놀랄 만한 하나의 사건이에요, 이게 영화가. 왜 그러냐면 그 역대도 김일성, 김정일, 김정은에 대한 그 3대 세습하는 그 자들에 대한 그 뭔가 하면 이름이나 그들의 신상 정보나 하나의 신적 존재 그들의 이름 함부로 제대로 부를 수 없던 북한 사람들이 완전 신처럼 이제 절대화하고 이렇게 이제 경배하고 이제 받들어 모시던 저.
One reason the state is so worried is this is becoming something of an underground phenomena. On the black market, the price of the interview is up about 10 times more than other DVDs. The state, the North Korean state, has created a task force headed by a 3-star general to keep it out. As far as Myanmar last week, the North Korean embassy interceded with the local police to shut down sales of the interview that was selling over 100 copies a day. And so as culture, it's having some effect. Right now, I'd like to have join us by Skype from an undisclosed location in Seoul, our friends from the Human Rights Foundation. You're going to meet Thor Halvorsen, who leads that initiative, Park Sang-hak, who leads this balloon launching effort, and Yeonmi Park, who you saw earlier talking about the film Titanic. Good morning, guys.
Good morning, Peter. Thank you for having us. Your presentation is astonishing. We'd like to name you Chief Marketing Officer for the Hack Them Back campaign.
I suppose now that Pang Myung-yong knows about that, I'll have to worry about it. I have a question for you. Tell us about the mission you have to Seoul in this Hack Them Back effort. What are the kinds of groups you're working with, and what are you going to be accomplishing this week?
North Korea is one of the most closed-off societies on the planet. It is the most tyrannical regime of all. People are not allowed to leave, and they have no rights. It's the only country in the world where there are no dissidents, meaning anyone who disagrees is executed. So we work with defector organizations who are trying to break the monopoly of information that the government has. Among them are people who do balloon drops, people who smuggle information in from China, or people who use radio waves and transistor radios. So that really sums it up. We have a crowdfunding issue. That's how we raise the money for this. And next to me are Yeonmi Park, who is now recently turned 21 years old, and she's a defector. And then, of course, Park Sang-hak, who has the nickname Fireball, because in South Korea, that's the nickname they gave him because he really is a dynamo with regard to these balloons. The person who arranged the subtitles to the interview and who had that defector you saw watch the interview. His name is Henry Song, and he is going to be the translator today. Henry, I'm going to bring him in right now so that you can actually check out. This is Henry, and the voice you're going to be hearing in English is his. So with that, we're happy to answer any questions you may have.
I have a question for Park Sang-hak via Henry. Park, the question I get on these balloons all the time is, aren't we putting people in danger? Aren't recipients likely to be harmed, arrested, or worse when this material comes in? So how do you handle that, and what's the mentality on the receiving end?
북한 주민들 대북 전단 받아보면 당국에서 간섭하고 위험한 건 사실입니다. 그러나 그 북한 주민들이
Yes, it is dangerous for the North Koreans to pick up the leaflets that fall into North Korea, but it is not a crime to pick up the leaflet. What is a crime is to actually pick it up and share the information with other citizens or to give the leaflets to others. The regime may do whatever it takes to try to stop the spread of the leaflets, but it cannot stop the desire of people to continue to have that starving hunger for more information from the outside world. And what is very popular with the North Korean citizens who receive the leaflets that we send are the dollar bills that are inserted among the leaflets that we send to them.
And Yeon-mi, I have a question for you. We're at a media conference. You've spoken of this millennial generation that has access to illegal media players. How big is this audience? And are they looking at this media and beginning to think about subversive issues, or are they just entertained? Tell us about this black market generation.
Hi, Peter.
Hi.
Thank you for having me here. Also, millennial generations and black market generations, that I define them somebody who was born in the late 80s and early 90s. That's somebody who never experienced ration system from the government. My experience when I was born there, the government never provided me any ration. So my case, and I remember that my father and mother got involved in black market business, and they found their own way to survive. And that's my generation. Like, we don't have any memory of the government provide us any food, and so we all get engaged with the black market business. So in the black market, we could access to outside information, and that shaped us today. That gave us new ideas, and the new ideas of thinking, and our future, that we don't really see our regimes anymore as a mother party. And that's, I think, the black market generation of Korea today.
Thank you. We have to wrap up now. A final question, Thor. We kind of cooked up this Hack Them Back campaign on Christmas Eve. Talk to me a little bit about how people can support it, what they can do, and our Indiegogo campaign.
Sure. Well, a lot of people are afraid of the North Korean regime because it will retaliate against people. In the case of Park Sang-hak, they've sent assassins to try and kill him. They've been arrested in South Korea. He now has 24-hour guard, and so on and so forth. The fact is, a lot of people are afraid of the Kim regime. But if you want to essentially help us do this and break monopoly of information and assist these people in learning more about the outside world and eventually realizing that they have the power to get rid of this government, then donate through hackthemback.com. That would take you to an Indiegogo campaign where you can donate anything from $50 to $50,000. We've already accumulated $50,000. We are at the Human Rights Foundation in New York. We are taking no overhead, no admin fees, absolutely nothing. All of it is going to be distributed to the organizations that are doing most inside South Korea to break the monopoly of information and assist the North Koreans with learning more about the outside world. So visit hackthemback.com.
Thank you very much, and thank you all. You know, in a week when free speech, when the fight for free speech is so vitally in the news again, you all inspire us, in which you see what it's like when people really put things on the line. Thank you very much.
Thank you.